Welcome to For the Love of Mystics, the podcast where we explore the mystical, the divine, and the ways that we can bring more sacredness and presence into our daily lives. I'm your host, Jennifer Jerkovsky, and I am here to help dive into stories, practices, and wisdom that help us nurture the divine spark within us all. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by a very special guest, James Twyman. James is known around the world as a peace troubadour. He has performed his peace concert in many countries at war, including Iraq, Bosnia, Ukraine, and many more. He is also the New York Times bestselling author of 26 books, including The Moses Code and his latest book, I Don't Know, Maybe I Love You. James is also a professed Franciscan friar with the Episcopal Community of Francis and Clare, and the founder of the Interfaith International Community in Mexico called Namaste Village. Welcome, James. It's wonderful to have you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It's wonderful to be able to join you in this beautiful discussion.
Thank you so much. Can you share a bit about your journey and what first drew you to the path of peace?
Oh, gosh, it's so hard sometimes to pinpoint exactly where something begins because they're all chapters and one leads to another. But there are pivotal moments for sure where you can look back and say, well, this part of the journey really took off here. And for me, I would say that happened in 1994 when a friend of mine gave me a sheet of paper that had the peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world. Now, these were prayers that had been prayed in a town we're going to talk about a lot here, Assisi in Italy, the home of St. Francis and St. Clare. And they came together, the leaders of all the different religions of the world came together for the first time in history, not to argue or talk or discuss or try and prove who's right or wrong, but to simply pray together. So the Dalai Lama was there for Buddhism, the Pope was there for Christianity, and on, and they all prayed the peace prayer from their religion. And a friend of mine happened to be there, brought those prayers back, and a friend gave them to me. And I'll never forget as I began to read each one, beginning with the Hindu prayer of peace, which started off in this way. O God, lead us from the unreal to the real. O God, lead us from darkness into light. O God, lead us from death into immortality. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti unto all. And as I read those words, I literally heard music beginning to play, and I thought that it was coming from the room next door, and I picked up my guitar to play along and realized it was going with this prayer. I just began to sing it out loud, and no sooner had I finished when I began to read the Buddhist prayer, and the same thing happened, and the Zoroastrian prayer, and the Christian prayer, until 1 hour had passed, and I had put all 12 of the prayers to music. And I knew that something miraculous had happened. And so from that moment on, people started calling me the Peace Troubadour. And I really wanted to start going to countries where conflicts were raging or wars were happening to simply share these prayers. In fact, what I really wanted to be at that time was just a homeless troubadour like St. Francis, just traveling around the world sharing these beautiful prayers. And the first country I was invited to, which was in 1995, was Bosnia and Croatia at the very end of the Balkan War there. And I had some amazing experiences, including meeting a group of mystics in the mountains of Bosnia called the Emissaries of Light. And I ended up writing that story down. And that's where the next chapter took off. Suddenly I had written a best-selling book and my life changed. I was no longer a penniless troubadour as I had hoped to be, but I still continued to do the peace concerts. And also, when I would go to countries, this is the early stages of emails. And we would ask people through emails to stop at a certain time. Let's say when I was in Iraq in 1998, I was invited there by Saddam Hussein to perform the peace concert at the same time that we were right on the verge of another terrible conflict. And my agent at that time, she had about 300 emails in her list. And she just sent out an email to those people asking them to stop and to pray at the given time. Well, it was one of the first examples of a viral email. and millions of people ended up receiving it. And they stopped at that time when I was doing the concert there in Iraq. And I could almost feel like it was raining peace, and everything shifted. And one by one, all of these adventures taught me that when we come together as one prayerful, peaceful pulse, that there's nothing more powerful. I've literally seen wars halted in the face of such amazing spiritual power. So those are just a couple of examples of many of the things that have led me on this journey. And there have been so many more, but we'll just stop there for the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned wars halted, and immediately I think of St. Clair. So I think we can get to that, but that idea of her, holding up the Eucharist, and here she is, holding on to that divine truth, and
That's right.
the enemy turns around.
Claire, who we don't hear much about because Francis is such a big character and he eclipses the contemplative character of Claire. But Claire stopped Assisi from being destroyed twice in her life. You mentioned one, which we can talk about, but it was actually twice that happened.
Amazing. I'd love to dive into that with you. When we talk about cultivating our connection with the divine spark, this mystical and wonderful side of life that we can bring into our daily practice, these powerful moments that you're talking about with St. Clair and her ability to connect is what allowed for these massive shifts to happen in a collective, for military to go, oh, we're not going to go here. We're going to turn around and go the other way. So when we're talking about this idea of divine spark and bringing that into our daily lives, can you share a little bit about how you cultivate your connection to the divine spark?
Good question. Simple and individual ways. I think we all have our own ways in to the experience. I'm very lucky because I do live in a beautiful spiritual community here in Mexico, Namaste Village, which you mentioned. And so we have 40 houses and apartments and just an incredible group of people from all over the world. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Namaste Village in Ajijic, Mexico. I'm your host, James Twyman, and I want to give you a walking tour of our beautiful community so you can see some of the beautiful and amazing changes that have taken place over the last 5 years. We're actually coming up on our 5th anniversary, and as soon as you walk in, you can begin to see the beautiful artwork, St. Francis and his Sufi brothers, this beautiful painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And then right here in the left, you're going to see a beautiful painting of Julian of Norwich, who was a medieval anchoress, and it was right on the other side of this wall that I spent 6 months in seclusion, meditating and praying. As soon as you come into the village more, you'll be able to see our living area, the dining room where we join for meals 5 days a week for breakfast and dinner. The food here is amazing, by the way, thanks to A. You'll see this enormous picture of Yogananda, such amazing art as you're seeing now and as you'll continue to see in this video. And this is our session area where we gather Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. and then Sunday at noon for our Unity service. We are an official Unity church on Sunday. And now in the back, you'll see this beautiful Aztec mural that is very new. We wanted to give an aspect of that native Mexican culture here, and some artists came and just did an amazing job. As you'll see, there's a very beautiful Aztec statue in the very middle, and you're going to be coming down soon into the garden area. Our dear gardener, Augustine, has been working this land for over 25 years, and we are so blessed to have many fruit trees and avocado trees, bananas, lemons. It is really just a paradise in so many ways. If you don't know, Ajijic, right next to Lake Chapala, has the second best weather in the entire world, according to National Geographic, and is a very safe environment right outside Guadalajara. So now we're going to be walking back into another section of the community that we call the garden. And in the garden area, you're going to see
4 buildings, and there are a total of 14 apartments here in the back. So let's go ahead and walk through now. You're going to notice the beautiful, vibrant colors of everything at Namaste Village. We have studio apartments here. We have 2 one-bedroom apartments. All of the buildings have beautiful mirror doors on top where you can look out over Lake Chapala and the entire town. Just such a beautiful place to relax and deepen your own spiritual journey.
And we come together every morning at 9 o'clock to pray together, to sing together, and just open. We call it the Namaste experience because this is an experience. It's not an intellectual grasping, but really the release of trying to understand this intellectually and diving into the actual experience, which is beyond words. So we do that every day here at Namaste Village, and I'm very grateful to have that chance to be in a beautiful community to do that. And in my own way, the characters of St. Francis and St. Clare of Assisi have always been access points. Even when I was a child, I loved Francis. I didn't know much about Clare at that time, but I took Francis as my confirmation name. And right out of high school, I left Minneapolis and went to Chicago to join the Franciscan order, the Catholic tradition. And I was only there for about a year and a half, but I like to say that when Francis gets his hooks in you, he never lets go. So it was always there. It was always pulling me until many years later when I discovered the community of Francis and Clare within the Episcopal tradition and joined that community. And of course, I've been to Assisi, I don't even know, somewhere between 25 and 30 times, leading retreats or pilgrimage walks. And for me to be able to bring people to my favorite town and to just walk the same paths that Francis and Clare would have walked, and to visit those places, many of which still, carry that vibratory resonance, even though it's been 800 years. Of course, in a town like that, it's filled with tourists. I always say that there are 2 types of people who come to Assisi. There are tourists and then pilgrims. A tourist comes to see, and a pilgrim comes to be. And for me to bring people there to actually be in that experience that transformed the lives of Francis and Clare 800 years ago is such a gift. But one of the things that you mentioned that I think is important to realize is that these 2 very simple characters did change the world, and they changed Europe as we know it. Many people don't realize that by the time Francis died, a quarter of Europe were one part or another of the Franciscan community. Most of them were what we call third order Franciscans, which are lay people, men and women who have families and jobs, but do their best to live that charism. In fact, you could look back and say that the feudal system that had held Europe together for so long, in many ways, fell apart because of the third order. There were so many third order Franciscans, and they all took vows of nonviolence. So when a feudal lord was trying to raise an army to go to war against the neighboring city or the neighboring principality, they could no longer get enough people to join their army because so many of them had taken vows of nonviolence because they were third order Franciscans. So it was, it has and will always be a deep part of my life and my own spirit to just remember all of these beautiful stories from the life of Francis and Clare, and to remember that we can do it today. In fact, I'll close with one quick question, a little quiz for you. I'll see if you can guess something. Someone, I'll give you a hint, in the 20th century, okay, said that if we had had 10 St. Francis of Assisi's, we would not have needed a revolution. Any idea who said that?
I don't know who said that, but I believe they are speaking truth, divine truth.
Well, a lot of people will say Lenin, like John Lennon. Close, but not quite, because it was a Lenin. It was Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, who was an atheist. but he recognized the power of someone so committed to peace as Francis was. And he realized that if he had had 10 people like that in Russia, they would not have needed the revolution that they actually did have. And that says a lot to me that an atheist, someone like Vladimir Lenin, would say that. It makes it feel even more true for me.
Amazing. It really does speak to the power of his life and his mission for somebody that doesn't have a belief to be able to see the influence and power that his life had.